Do you remember the dinosaur era prior to 2014? You know, the Manmohan Singh era. The era where retail inflation touched the new record highs almost every other week. Well, if you remember, this inflation led to the decimation of UPA at the center. The inflation at the time was entirely the making of UPA and its disastrous policies by the supposed best PM of the country's history. While the NDA government never really allowed inflation to get out of its hands in the last 8 years since it came to power, some unforeseeable international situations have ensured that retail inflation has touched a new high in the last few months. However, unlike the UPA, the current government is willing to take the courageous calls and sort out the issue at the earliest. If media reports and their sources are to be believed, the Modi government may be gearing up to ban the export of rice after having already banned the export of sugar and wheat. Hi and welcome to TFI English, the national socio-political analysis arm of the TFI Media Group. I am your host Piyush, and if you haven't subscribed to the TFI English channel yet, please hit the subscribe button and press the bell icon to receive all the latest updates. Coming back to the story. In this video, I will tell you why India may cap rice exports after wheat and sugar. According to an Economic Times report, to ensure adequate domestic supplies and prevent a rise in prices, a committee led by Prime Minister's office is doing a product-by-product analysis of essential commodities. The product on the top of the pile is non-basmati rice, and if the committee gives the nod, its export to nearly 150 countries could be halted. While the previous government regimes would have continued to supply food grains to the Westerners just to seek validation, the current Modi administration is not interested in playing such dumb games. You see, for NDA, the welfare and food security of the public is more important than being in the good books of few whites, a concept which the UPA had a hard time wrapping its feeble minds around. It is pertinent to note that retail inflation has reached an 8-year high of 7.79% in April, primarily due to Russia-Ukraine conflict which has disturbed the flow of international trade. Thus, the government anticipated that, despite record exports this season, it was time to pull the plug and sort out our silos for our own people. Rice exports from India, also the world's second biggest consumer of grain, jumped to a record 21.2 million tons in the fiscal year to March 2022 from 17.8 million tons the previous year. Food Corporation of India has procured a record 80.4 million tons of rice paddy from growers so far this year, against 77 million tons over the same period last year. Despite all this, the government is not willing to leave anything to chance. It gave the same logic when it announced a cap on the export of sugar. Food Secretary Sudhanshu Pandey announcing the cap remarked, "India's exports have reached a record high in this season, and now domestic availability has to be ensured during October-November as consumption increases in the festive season." As reported extensively by TFI, while the sugar and rice yield has been bumper this season, the wheat yield has been hit by an extreme heat wave across the country. This forced the government to stop the export, which even in the best case scenario amounts to less than 1% of the global wheat trade. As for the Western world, PM Modi's answer to them is simple. For years, the white-skinned Westerners and their lobbying groups masquerading as world leaders in global bodies put India at the bottom of the pile when it came to hunger index or providing leeway to Indian farmers to produce and export their goods at a decent price. India was at its lowest, and yet these leaders didn't stop from punching us down. While India is not in the same category as them, it surely is putting the interests of its people first and foremost. The moment the food security is ensured, New Delhi will lift the export ban and supply the food grains. Until then, the Western nations should stop being nuisance and understand the logic behind India's moves.